Chapter Helena's Home. Helena led Miles through a series of winding pathways that seemed to spiral deeper into the heart of Atlantis. The ruins around them grew quieter, the hum of metromite veins more pronounced as the city's energy pulsed gently through the walls and floors. They eventually reached an area that felt different, more serene and preserved than the rest of the city. The air seemed warmer, almost comforting, and the glowing veins lining the pathways emitted a soft, golden light. "This was the residential district," Helena explained, her voice steady but tinged with pride, "where most Atlanteans lived. My home is one of the few structures that remained intact after the city fell." Miles followed her as she stopped in front of an arched stone doorway. The entrance was adorned with intricate carvings, spirals, waves, and geometric patterns that seemed to ripple with faint light. Helena pushed the door open, revealing the space inside. The chamber was simple but functional, a blend of ancient elegance and advanced technology. The walls were smooth, carved from a luminous stone, with veins of metromite weaving through them like glowing roots. The veins pulsed softly, casting a warm, ambient light that filled the room with a sense of calm. "This is your home?" Miles asked, stepping inside, his voice filled with awe. Helena nodded. "It's not much, but it keeps me safe. And it works, just like it did for my parents." The space was divided into sections, each serving a distinct purpose. A low stone table sat in the center, surrounded by smooth, rounded stools. Along one wall, shelves were carved directly into the stone, holding an assortment of artifacts and tools. Some items appeared to be personal: a small carved figurine, a necklace, and what looked like a journal with faded pages. Others were practical, Atlantean tools with sleek, glowing designs that hinted at their functionality. On another wall, a narrow doorway led to what appeared to be a sleeping area. The bed was crafted from woven materials that shimmered faintly, giving the impression of both comfort and resilience. A corner of the chamber held an open basin with water gently flowing into it from a small spout embedded in the wall. Miles ran his fingers along the edge of the table, marveling at its smooth texture. "It's incredible," he said. "Everything looks so alive." Helena smiled faintly, gesturing to the glowing veins in the walls. "That's because it is. The metromite isn't just a power source. It's part of the city itself. It heats the space, provides light, and keeps the air comfortable." Miles raised an eyebrow. "It heats the space? How?" Helena stepped to one of the walls, placing her palm over a glowing section of metromite. "The veins are connected to a central energy system beneath the city. They regulate temperature based on the environment outside. When it's cold, they radiate heat. When it's hot, they cool the air. It's automatic." Miles shook his head in disbelief. "So, no fireplaces? No fans?" Helena chuckled softly. "The city takes care of it." She moved to the basin, dipping her hand into the clear water. "This is part of the plumbing system. Atlantis had an advanced irrigation network. Water is pulled from natural reservoirs beneath the city and purified using metromite. The flow is continuous, so we always had clean water for drinking, bathing, and irrigation." Miles crouched by the basin, running his hand under the flowing water. It was cool and refreshing, almost invigorating. "So, no pumps or pipes?" Helena shook her head. "Not in the way you'd think. The water travels through channels built into the stone, powered by metromite. It's quiet, efficient, and sustainable." She led him to another corner of the chamber where small potted plants glowed faintly. "Irrigation works the same way. The water flows into channels in the soil, keeping the plants hydrated without waste. These plants are from my garden. A mix of fruits, vegetables, and herbs. They grow faster and stronger because of the metromite-enriched soil." Miles touched one of the glowing leaves, marveling at its texture. "This is unbelievable. Your people figured out how to live in harmony with nature, didn't they?" Helena nodded, her expression softening. "That was always the goal, progress without destruction. We built systems that worked with the environment, not against it." As she spoke, she walked over to a small fixture on the wall and tapped it gently. A series of lights flickered on, illuminating the space further. "Even the lighting is part of the system. The metromite veins provide constant energy, but we could control the intensity by tapping or gesturing. It's simple, but effective." Miles leaned against the wall, taking it all in. "Your people weren't just advanced. They were brilliant. This is the kind of technology my world desperately needs. We're so busy burning through resources and fighting over power that we've forgotten how to live with the world. Helena's gaze softened as she watched him. It sounds like your world is very different from mine. Miles nodded, his voice quieter now. It is. That's why seeing what your people created, it's overwhelming. You built something beautiful here, Helena. Helena looked away for a moment, her fingers brushing against the edge of the table. It wasn't perfect, she said softly, but we tried. Miles straightened, meeting her gaze. I think you did more than try. You succeeded, and you've kept it alive. That's incredible! For the first time, Helena smiled fully, her guard lowering just a little more. Thank you, she said, her voice almost a whisper. That means more than you know. The two stood in silence for a moment, the glow of the metromite veins casting a warm light around them. For Miles, Helena's home wasn't just a place, it was a symbol of everything Atlantis stood for. And for Helena, sharing it with someone for the first time in years felt like opening a door she had long kept closed. After showing Miles her home, Helena led him through a narrow passageway that opened into a hidden oasis. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint, earthy aroma that mingled with the hum of metromite veins embedded in the walls. As they stepped out into the open space, Miles stopped in his tracks, his eyes widening at the sight before him. The garden was breathtaking. Neatly arranged rows of glowing plants stretched across the space, their leaves and fruits shimmering softly in shades of green, blue, and gold. Some of the fruits were round and plump, hanging low from vines, while others were slender and elongated, glowing faintly with inner light. The soil beneath the plants sparkled with flecks of metromite crystals, radiating a soft luminescence that seemed to breathe life into everything it touched. Helena, Miles whispered, unable to take his eyes off the sight. This is incredible. Helena smiled, a faint sense of pride in her expression. This is my garden. It's not much, but it's kept me alive. She crouched near a glowing vine and gently plucked a round golden fruit, holding it up for Miles to see. These plants grow in soil enriched by orichalcum. It's what allows them to thrive here, even after everything else fell apart. Miles crouched beside her, reaching out to touch one of the leaves. It was soft and cool, almost silky, and it shimmered faintly under his fingertips. How did you learn to do this? Helena leaned back, her green eyes fixed on the glowing rows of plants. My parents taught me. They showed me how to read the soil, how to tell which plants would grow best in orichalcum-rich areas. After they were gone, I used what I learned in the library archives to keep improving. I experimented, adapted. Atlantis's ecosystem was designed to be symbiotic, so it wasn't as hard as it might seem. Miles picked up a glowing blue fruit from one of the vines, holding it up to the light. What about these? What do they do? Helena took the fruit from him and sliced it open with a small, elegant blade she carried. Inside, the flesh shimmered like liquid gold. This one is rich in nutrients. One fruit can sustain you for an entire day. It's sweet, but also filling. She handed him half. Try it. Miles hesitated before taking a bite. The fruit was unlike anything he'd ever tasted. Sweet, tangy, and oddly refreshing, as though it had been infused with pure energy. He swallowed and let out a surprised laugh. This is amazing! If your people had this, you must have never worried about hunger. Helena nodded. We didn't. Our agriculture was advanced, but it was also simple. Everything worked in balance. The plants thrived because of the orichalcum, and we used what we needed without overharvesting. It was harmony. She gestured to another row of plants, their leaves glowing faintly green with small red berries dotting the stems. These, for example, are medicinal. They can heal minor wounds and ease pain. Atlantean healers use them in combination with our technology. It's one of the reasons our people lived so long. We had the knowledge to use nature and science together. Miles walked through the rows, running his hands over the glowing plants. It's so different from where I come from. Back home, we've lost this connection. Farming is industrial, mechanical. Everything is about efficiency and profit. But here, it's like everything works together, like it's alive. Helena stepped beside him, her expression thoughtful. That was the foundation of our society. We believed that progress should never come at the expense of balance. That's why we designed Atlantis the way we did, to live with the world, not against it. Miles turned to her, a deep admiration in his voice. I can see why Atlantis thrived for so long. Your people didn't just build a city, they created a way of life. A better way. Helena gave him a small, wistful smile. We tried, but even we weren't immune to destruction. Her gaze drifted over the garden, her voice growing softer. This place, it reminds me of what we once had. It's not much, but it's enough to keep a piece of Atlantis alive. Miles watched her for a moment, feeling a deep respect for the woman who had not only survived but also preserved a piece of her lost world. You've done more than just survive, Helena, he said quietly. You've protected something extraordinary. You've kept your people's legacy alive. Helena looked at him, her green eyes meeting his. For a moment, the walls of Atlantis seemed to fade, leaving just the two of them in the peaceful glow of the garden. Thank you, she said softly. That means more than you know. They stood there in silence for a while, the hum of the metromite veins and the soft glow of the plants surrounding them. For Miles, it felt like stepping into a dream, a glimpse of a world that had mastered what his own could only hope to achieve. For Helena, it was the first time in years that she didn't feel alone in her garden, sharing a piece of her heart with someone who finally understood. Helena led Miles further down the winding pathways of Atlantis, the soft hum of metromite veins accompanying their steps. The ruins gradually gave way to a more secluded area, hidden from view by large stone walls and thick ancient debris. As they approached, Miles noticed the entrance to a chamber, fortified with angular stones and debris Helena had carefully arranged to block the path of anything unwelcome. The structure felt imposing, yet its soft, glowing veins of metromite gave it a warmth that contrasted with its harsh exterior. Helena pushed open the reinforced door. It's secure! The Scion cannot reach me here! Miles followed her inside, glancing around the chamber. The space was simple yet efficient, a blend of necessity and ingenuity. The walls were lined with glowing metromite veins that provided light and warmth, creating a comfortable environment despite the otherwise cold stone. The arched ceiling was high, giving the room an open, almost serene feel. You've done all this yourself? Miles asked, gesturing to the reinforced entrance and neatly arranged interior. Helena nodded as she moved toward the far corner, where a small stack of Atlantean tools and weapons rested. My parents started fortifying this place when I was little. After they were gone, I improved it. The Scion can't survive on land, they're bound to the water, but they're dangerous hunters in the canals. I had to make sure they could never get in. Miles tilted his head, intrigued. They're stuck in the water. Like fish? Helena crossed her arms, her expression serious. They're not just fish. They're intelligent predators, fast and deadly. They've adapted to the water. Gills, webbed hands, and sharp teeth. They hunt anything that gets too close to the canals or the deeper ruins. But they cannot survive on land. That's the only reason I've been able to live here. Miles glanced at the small opening in the far wall where he heard the faint trickle of water. And that? Helena walked over, crouching by the canal that ran through the chamber. The water shimmered faintly with particles of metromite, its gentle flow creating a calming sound that filled the space. This canal is part of the city's original water system. It provided clean water for drinking and irrigation. The metromite purifies it, so it's always safe. But it's also connected to the deeper parts of the city, the places the Scion call home. Miles crouched beside her, dipping his hand into the water. It was cool, refreshing, and seemed to carry an energizing quality. You use this for fishing? Helena nodded, gesturing to a simple but well-crafted fishing tool nearby. When I need to. The fish here have adapted to the orichalcum in the water. They're rich in nutrients, but I have to be careful. The Scion hunt in the same waters. They're territorial, and they don't tolerate anything that intrudes. Miles frowned, his gaze drifting to the glowing canal. You've been defending this place from them all on your own? Helena stood, brushing her hands off on her pants. Yes, the Scion don't come often. They stay in the deeper ruins, where it's darker, but they've ventured here a few times. I've reinforced the walls and the entrance. It's enough to keep them out. Miles looked around the chamber again, admiring the thought and care that had gone into its design. Shelves carved into the stone walls held jars of preserved food, bundles of dried herbs, and tools she had clearly crafted herself. Along another wall, a small cot made from Atlantean materials sat neatly, with glowing fabrics providing both comfort and warmth. Despite the dangers outside, the space felt secure, like a haven. "This place," Miles began, shaking his head. "It's incredible, Helena. You've created something safe and peaceful." Helena tilted her head slightly, a faint smile crossing her lips. "It's not much, but it's home. My parents and I lived here for years before they—" She trailed off, her expression briefly clouding with sadness. Miles softened his tone. "Before they passed?" Helena nodded. "They kept me safe, taught me everything I know about Atlantis. After they were gone, I had to learn to survive on my own. The Scion, the predators, and the deep. They're constant reminders of what this city has become." Miles hesitated, then placed a hand on the wall, feeling the faint hum of metramite beneath his palm. "You've done an incredible job, Helena. Not just surviving, but keeping Atlantis alive. I don't think many people could do what you've done." Helena looked at him, her green eyes searching his face for a moment. "You mean that?" "I do," Miles said earnestly. "And I don't say that lightly. This place, everything you've built, it's a testament to your strength, and it's amazing." For the first time, Helena's guarded expression softened completely. She gave him a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Miles. That means more than you know." They stood there for a moment, the gentle trickle of water and the glow of the metramite creating a tranquil atmosphere. For Helena, this chamber was more than a place of safety. It was a symbol of resilience and hope. And for Miles, it was a reminder of just how extraordinary she was, not just as the last Atlantean, but as someone who had kept her world alive against all odds.